Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, it's a great pleasure for me to present the Austrian Allergy Research Cluster to you towards allergen-specific prediction and prevention of allergy at the day of the Medical University of Vienna. Now this program, this research program, is a common program that is coordinated by the Medical University of Vienna in collaboration with the University of Salzburg, Medical University of Graz, University of Veterinary Medicine, Vienna, Karl-Landsteiner University for Health Sciences, Krems, University of Natural Resources and Life Sciences, Vienna, and the University of Graz. You can see it's a truly networking program that we propose in this application. Now, what it is all about? It is about a very important disease that everybody knows. It's about allergy. Allergy is the most important immunologically mediated hypersensitivity disease. Those of you who are allergic to birch pollen suffer already from the beginning of the pollen season with birch. The most common manifestation of allergy is hay fever. It's allergic rhinitis, allergic conjunctivitis. You will say it's not a very severe disease, but all of those who suffer from it know that it impacts very heavily on the life and it reduces the quality of life tremendously. There's also cutaneous manifestations of allergy like atopic dermatitis and urticaria that affect people very heavily. But some people suffer very much also from food allergy, gastrointestinal symptoms when they ingest milk, eggs, peanuts, and the most severe respiratory manifestation, allergic asthma, that is severely debilitating and can lead to death. And then, of course, there is very severe cases of systemic anaphylaxis, for example, in certain types of food allergy or in insect venom allergy or drug allergy, where people can die when they encounter allergen sources. Allergy is very interesting to me as a scientist because it affects many different organs. It varies by the age, and people are very different. And this also explains why we need different forms of treatment and why we have to have very sophisticated forms of diagnosis to come to a personalized management of the patients. Allergy is also interesting because it's a disease of increasing importance. You can see here basically the reports of allergy in 1926 in a Swiss cohort, where in about 77,000 people, the prevalence of allergy was recorded with approximately 1%. What you can see here is that in the meantime, in European surveys, we find that more than 30% of the people suffer from allergy. And if we would go into a school, in an elementary school, and we would just search for IG sensitization, that means kind of the beginning of allergy in children, we would find that 50 to 60% of the children as of today have IG sensitizations and can become allergic. So indeed, allergy is a very important disease. Now, we cannot live without history, and I think Austrians can be proud of the history in the past, and allergy research in Austria builds on a long fundament. In fact, the term allergy, as it is, and as we use it as of today, was mentioned the first time in 1906 by the Austrian pediatrician Clemens von Pirquet. Clemens von Pirquet at that time was fighting against a very severe disease, diphtheria and infectious diseases in children, applying anti-sera antibodies to protect the children because antibiotics were not known at that time. And there he observed hypersensitivity in the form of serum sickness and actually described it the first time in 1906. And this was basically the first mention of allergy as we know it. Now, Austria continued to play a leading role in molecular allergology since 1988. You will ask yourself, why is there a gap between 1906 and 1988? And the answer is quite easy. There were two major world wars that affected Austria severely, and there was occupation time of a decade that basically brought back Austrian research into the Stone Age. and it was very difficult to recover. Actually, the recovery in allergy research happened in the late 80s, and what you see here is a very historical building. It's a building where Karl Landsteiner, the famous Austrian immunologist and Nobel laureate, discovered the blood groups and was working in Vienna. It's actually very close to the old university buildings. And in fact, in the very same house, which at that time was used as a gun ammunition fabrication place, we actually got rooms adapted. And here we started in 1988 to clone the first allergens in the world. So basically, this is the cradle of molecular allergology in Austria. Now, this project was very exciting to us, and I started there with 2 colleagues, another medical doctor and a biochemist, and we were utilizing a brand new technology, and this technology was looking in the allergen sources, but we were not isolating the allergenic molecules directly. We were going for the genetic information. We isolated genetic information coding for the allergens. And by the discovery of an enzyme called reverse transcriptase, we were able to synthesize the DNA template. This was very important because it gave to us the structure of those antigens that cause actually allergy in humans. Now, based from this, we were able to develop what we call synthetic allergens or recombinant allergens that we then used to study the mechanisms of disease for molecular diagnosis, the basis for personalized treatment, precision medicine, and for prevention and cure in the form of vaccination. Now, this was a fundamental step forward, and I would like to show you the steps in this. And I'm very proud to say that we Austrians, like in skiing, not always we are, but in most of the times we were amongst the first to do things. Actually, the first allergens that were cloned were the allergen from a venom from basically the wasp, a house dust mite allergen from Australia, and you can see here that the Vienna group succeeded to report the first birch-borne allergen, the first plant allergen, which is now so important for all of those who are suffering from birch-borne allergy. So in this paper, we reported the deciphering of the structure of the major allergen of birch. Importantly, and shortly thereafter, because we continued, we succeeded to decipher the molecular basis for allergic cross-reactivity. What does it mean? In reality, for the patient, it means that you react with one protein, for example, the major allergen of birch, and then you can show cross-reactivity, for example, with apple and hazelnuts. And the reason for this is that there is highly conserved proteins in it that the immune system cannot discriminate. And this is the reason why the people then suffer from multiple allergies to multiple allergen sources. The story continues. As medical doctors, we felt obliged to develop also something for our patients. And we tested then if one can use the synthetic allergens that we produced instead of the allergen extracts obtained, for example, from birch pollen for diagnosis. And actually, this paper in 1991 was the first to report the successful diagnosis of tree pollen allergy by recombinant allergens, and this was a landmark. Now, by the time many different allergens became isolated, we know the three-dimensional structure of them, and there were more than 90 at that time that were known. The question was, how can we then test patients for these multiple components? And that time, again, Vienna was leading in the world. We invented what is called the Allergen Chip. What is the Allergen Chip? The Allergen Chip basically is based on the printing of the individual allergen molecules onto small glass slides, and for this we use a highly sophisticated mechanic device. It's a microspotter, and that gives you this kind of allergen chip that you can see here. Now, the allergen chip can accommodate hundreds of different allergen molecules at a time, and allows to test the reactivity of a patient towards all these 100 allergen molecules with a drop of blood. Now, this was again the first time that this was reported, and it opened the basis for modern molecular allergy diagnosis, and again, Vienna was pioneering here. We continued to use allergens then also for treatment. There's a treatment, it's a kind of a vaccine against allergy, It's called Allergen-Specific Immunotherapy. It's the injection of the disease-causing allergen into the patient. And actually, again, Vienna, Austria was the first to report the first immunotherapy trial in patients where we used recombinant allergens that were made basically in expression systems, so synthetically, to basically prevent the progression of allergic disease in sensitized patients. So you can see it's a success story that we built on. Now this continues because we have refined these allergy vaccines into more safe vaccines by using a different concept that is called the Haptin carrier principle, where we couple allergen peptides to a carrier molecule. And this is actually ongoing in clinical trials now. And the exciting thing is now that these type of vaccines seem so safe that we can consider them for prophylactic allergy vaccination. And this is something that nobody has dared ever before. And we intend to move into this direction in our allergy research program. So the Austrian Allergy Research Cluster will basically study the inception, the beginning of allergy, basically when a child is born. And then it will look how the allergy develops in children, and then how it progresses towards severe forms. The idea of this research program is that you can already predict very early, eventually even before the child is born, whether the child will have a high chance to become sensitized and to develop the disease. Because we all know that prophylactic intervention is the most successful and the least costly that we can have to stop the beginning of the disease. It's like in cancer. When you can intervene very early, then you can basically prevent the patient from getting severely sick. And the statement here says we will start to diagnose and treat allergic sensitization. This means silent sensitization before even the symptoms and severe disease occur. Now for this, the Austrian Allergy Research Cluster will develop molecular diagnostics to predict the development of allergy. At the moment, we have these modern chip tests with all these printed allergen molecules that give us a hand-on personalized treatment for allergic people, because every allergic person is different from the other. One needs, for example, immunotherapy, one needs symptomatic medication, one needs removal of allergen or diet. Now we will move now to another level. We will basically define the sensitization and predict what children become sensitive and develop allergy, and start the treatment already here. And this may even go down to the level of genetic testing to reveal the predisposition for allergy. The ambitious goal of the Austrian Allergy Research Cluster is to break really the ground towards something that nobody has ever touched, and this is prophylactic allergen-specific vaccination and tolerance induction. And the idea with this is that eventually we can eradicate allergy like infectious or certain infectious diseases by vaccination. And here we are thinking about a stepwise process. We are here at the therapeutic vaccination. We have begun to vaccinate non-allergic adults to show the safety, and we will move on to preventive vaccination, basically in mothers and children, and early after the birth of children, to prevent the development of allergy. Now, the unique features of this Austrian Allergy Research Cluster that we hope to start in the next year is that we focus on a very important disease, that's allergy. We built on a long and solid background in molecular allergology in Austria on our tradition. We unite several universities. We are a small country, and we need to basically pull together our forces to achieve something. And what is very important, we involve different disciplines, technical disciplines, clinicians, biochemistry, molecular biology. We have a very original, and this is the cradle actually that we are here in Vienna, an allergen-specific preventive precision medicine approach for allergy. We start from what causes the disease, the allergen. We go to understand the mechanisms of disease. We go to molecular diagnosis, to personalized treatment, precision medicine, and what is the goal, to prevention and cure of this disease. This is what we want to achieve. And what you will see here is that the Medical University of Vienna with the partner universities have big goals to make the health and the life of people better in Austria. Thank you very much.